I analyzed 100 influencers' portfolios and their results, and honestly, I'm glad I did. It showed me exactly which mistakes to avoid and how much trust I can really put in their calls. Today I'm sharing 7 things I learned so you don't have to waste hours digging like I did. Number 1, people and crypto influencers are extremely greedy. Before digging into these influencer portfolios, I genuinely thought having at least 50% in Bitcoin was common sense, maybe even 80+% for larger portfolios. Altcoins have always been the risky side of crypto. Sure, the legendary gains from 2017 and 2021 are tempting, but it would be smarter to think about the downside before going overboard like most of these portfolios do. Most influencer portfolios from 2023, early 2024, and even at the March 2024 peak were overwhelmingly altcoin heavy. Let's compare that to how things played out in the last cycle. In the 2018-2019 run, Bitcoin did a clean 4x into mid-2019 before breaking down again, and it took roughly 500 days just to reclaim that high. Now imagine buying ETH during that same move. You would have been down 40–60% for over a year, and that's ETH, the safest alt. Let's go deeper. Cardano dropped 50–75% and also took about 500 days to get back to the 2019 high. It's easy to forget that pain when looking at a 30x from the 2019 high or a 100x from the low. But the truth is, most people didn't buy the low, and they definitely didn't know those gains were coming. The reality is it made no sense to hold alts through the early and mid stages of the cycle. Serious dominance shifts toward altcoins only happened in the post-halving year, in 2017, and again in 2021. So far this cycle, Bitcoin dominance is still climbing. Realistically, it only made sense to go more alt-heavy a few months before 2025. Yet here we are in this cycle and influencers were pushing altcoins throughout. Data said it made no sense. History said it made no sense, but they kept doing it. Why? Only they know the real answer. I have my own opinion, but I'm not here to accuse anyone without proof. What I do want is for you to think about this. Do you genuinely believe they care about their viewers? Do they care what happens to you? Do they even think about the consequences of the sponsorship deals they take? Ask yourself that before following anyone's picks again. By the way, I covered the topic of greed in more detail in my last newsletter. Link in the description if you want to check it out. Number 2, this time is different. As we approached the post-halving year, many influencers began calling for an alt season, which does make sense based on past cycles, so I'm not surprised. But here's the issue. If they truly believed alt season happens in the post-halving year, why were they building alt-heavy portfolios back in 2023 and first half of 2024? Many openly said Bitcoin doesn't provide enough upside and either skipped it completely or gave it a small allocation. Looking at the portfolios and predictions from late 2024, one thing is clear: over 90% of influencers expected alt season to kick off in January 2025. But as we know, it didn't. And the problem is their portfolios were already down 30%, 50%, even 70% against Bitcoin by then. Only a massive alt season could have saved them, and now the situation looks even worse. And even in 2021, one of the best years for alts, the top 100 altcoins averaged just a 4x gain against BTC. So most of these influencer portfolios, which were highly diversified and down 80% before the alt season, would have at best broken even compared to just holding Bitcoin in the first place. Being spread too thin across too many coins tends to yield average performance, not outperformance. And this is where the current cycle really is different. The post-halving year, 2025, began and the pattern broke. Instead of a rally, we saw collapse. Many alts made new lows against Bitcoin. Now, if someone had shared a strategy of rotating part of their BTC into alts between August and November 2024, based on how previous cycles looked, that would have made sense. Market structure back then resembled 2020 and 2016. That kind of rotation attempt is understandable. You can't blame someone for trying it. But after reviewing dozens of influencer videos, I didn't see a single one present that kind of timing-based strategy. No rotation, no risk management, just overexposed altcoin bags. And the ironic part is, if someone had done that BTC to alt DCA rotation in late 2024 and simply set a Bitcoin stop loss once the market bounced in mid-December, they could have exited with more Bitcoin or at least limited the damage. Number 3, most influencers just shill no matter what. This one's important to understand so you don't get wrecked. As mentioned earlier, most influencers were publishing altcoin-heavy portfolios throughout the entire cycle. But there's something even more critical to focus on: timing. I've shared portfolio results from various points in time, and in most cases, the biggest difference isn't about the coins picked, unless someone caught a 50x like Murad. The real edge came from timing the entry. Even if someone went all in on alts, entering at the right moment made it possible to take profits, set a stop loss, or at least avoid getting completely destroyed while praying for an alt season. Many portfolios released at the right time did a 2-3x, some even doubled against Bitcoin. But if you entered near a local top, your only decent option was to exit quickly with a small loss, and that's emotionally difficult. Most people just hold, and now those portfolios are down 80% plus against Bitcoin, which is near its all-time high, while most alts are far below and making new cycle lows in BTC terms. Some influencers hold more stable portfolios. Others constantly rotate into new picks. But one thing is consistent: they keep shilling at the worst possible times. There are barely any exceptions. Either someone is bearish on alts all the time, like Ben Cohen, or they're part of the hype machine like most of the others I've covered. So far, the Ben Cohen camp has performed far better on average. For me, the takeaway is clear: only touch altcoins after a serious flushout, like after the yen carry trade unwind in August 2024. Anything shilled after a crypto rally is almost always a trap. Number 4, diversification doesn't work. Most crypto influencer portfolios are spread across a wide range of narratives, usually justified as a way to stay safe or avoid missing the next big thing. On the surface, that sounds smart, but in practice, it's a major mistake. I've analyzed dozens of portfolios, not just the ones featured on my channel, and the results are consistent. Diversified altcoin portfolios almost never outperform. In fact, it's mathematically near impossible for them to do so. Yes, there can be exceptions. If someone happens to allocate 1% to a 1000x gem, that one position could carry the whole portfolio and even outperform Bitcoin. But realistically, what are the odds of that happening? To catch a 1000x, you'd need to buy coins at a sub 1 million market cap. Even in past cycles, with just a few thousand coins on the market, it was extremely difficult. Now, with millions of tokens and countless new ones launching daily, the odds are worse than ever. Most microcaps go to zero and get replaced in a constant churn, and even if you do pick a future 1000x, you likely won't hold it all the way. Most people take profits along the way, which makes sense, but it also drastically reduces the final gains from that moonshot. The best coin call I've seen among top influencers was SBX 6900 by Murad, over 50x so far. Could it reach 1000x from the time of his call if a real alt season kicks off? Maybe. But even if it does, it's one standout among hundreds of influencer picks. I'd bet the combined number of coins shilled by the top 50 most popular crypto influencers easily exceeds 1,000. Chasing all of them would, at best, lead to average market performance, and more likely, underperformance, since many are shilled after their rallies. So catching the right alts is extremely hard, but it's also the only way to outperform Bitcoin, which brings us to the final point: safety. A lot of influencers claim their diversification strategy is meant to reduce risk. That's objectively false. If altcoins on average underperform Bitcoin and the more diversified you are, the closer you get to that average, then you are, by design, safely underperforming Bitcoin while taking on more risk. It just doesn't make any sense. Number 5, the reality of paid sponsorships. Big influencers don't make videos out of goodwill. For many, this is a full-time business. Even the ones who claim it's just a hobby, like Becker, still take sponsorship deals. And if you're taking money to promote coins, it's no longer just a hobby. Let's be honest about that. Even small channels like mine get sponsorship offers. I haven't accepted any as of today, just so you know. But for large channels, the financial incentive is massive, and that has a clear influence on the content they produce. Let's look at it from a psychological perspective. Say an influencer doesn't want to promote total garbage, so they only take deals with projects they think are decent. That might sound fair, but the reality is, the moment you narrow your coin selection to who's willing to pay, your odds of outperforming Bitcoin drop significantly. Then there's how these sponsorships are disclosed, or rather not disclosed. Sometimes the influencer says something like, "I'm invested in this project," which sounds like they bought in with their own money. That creates trust. But in most cases, that investment came from a seed deal, early allocation, or straight-up payment in tokens for promotion. The audience often doesn't get that context. So yes, they're invested, but not in the same way their viewers are. They didn't buy on the open market. They're often sitting on pre-sale tokens with huge upside and very little risk, while the average viewer is buying in at inflated prices. And if these influencers are all getting paid in tokens by the same projects, it's inevitable that they'll be selling slowly over time while still talking positively about the project. Vesting or not, that supply hits the market. This doesn't mean influencers are always lying, but they've mastered how to phrase things just carefully enough that they can't be called out for it. Think about how often you hear someone call a coin the next big thing, and then never mention it again a few weeks later. That's not research. That's a paid campaign that ended. So don't get wrecked following people who are just doing marketing. Always ask yourself, what's their incentive here? Number 6, risk management or the lack of it. Influencers do mention risk management, sure, but 9 times out of 10 it's something vague like, make sure to manage your risk properly, with zero detail behind it. Now let's look at the portfolios they actually share. Most don't even allocate 50% to Bitcoin. If they had, a lot of them would be sitting comfortably in profit, at least in USD terms. If you've watched my earlier videos, you've seen the results. Almost none of them have an exit strategy. No stop losses, no planned rebalancing, nothing if things go wrong. And for altcoins this cycle, things did go wrong. Plenty of coins are down 90% plus and may never recover, even if we do eventually get a big alt season. Many portfolios that were shared around local tops are likely to just break even in the best case scenario, and that's being optimistic. The truth is, the downside on alts is brutal. A coin can drop 99% or go to zero, and that's not rare. We've seen top influencer picks do exactly that. If your portfolio isn't grounded with at least 50–80% in Bitcoin, a few of those percent drawdowns can wipe out your portfolio. The risk is huge, and most influencer portfolios completely ignore it. And because influencers tend to shill hardest during rallies, it's easy to get caught up in the hype. That's exactly when having clear rules matters most. Even a basic plan helps. Maybe it's cutting any coin that drops 25% or setting exit levels per coin. Whatever the method, there has to be a framework to limit the damage when the market turns. The simplest way is to maintain a substantial Bitcoin position. But you rarely hear influencers talk about this. At the end of the day, it's you clicking the buy button, and without a plan, you'll probably have to learn the hard way. Going all in on altcoins, especially after a big rally, is not a strategy. It's just gambling. Number 7, flip-flopping. This one can be especially dangerous to people new to crypto. If you've been in the market longer, you've probably noticed it already. It comes in different forms. The simplest one is switching from bearish to bullish and back again, sometimes after just a short-term move. Some influencers do this constantly. One day they're ultra bullish because the market pumped, and the next day they flip bearish after a minor correction. Their thumbnails, titles, and takes are emotionally charged for a reason: attention. And with their experience as content creators, they know exactly how to tap into sentiment. That's why they get views. Whether you like it or not, the more educational or analytical the content, the harder it is to keep it entertaining. Meanwhile, simple titles like "Market Crash," "It's Over," or "This Rally is Real" bring the clicks. Another form of flip-flopping is what I mentioned earlier, jumping from coin to coin. One day it's a hidden gem they just found, and a few weeks later, it's gone from their feed. No follow-up, no exit plan, just silence. A few random examples: Lucky from Miles Deutscher, Colin on Crypto Banter, Peanut from Becker. These are just off the top of my head, but the pattern is widespread. It happens constantly. Sometimes you might feel like they truly believe in the project, and maybe they do for a moment, but over time you'll become immune to it. Personally, I just assume there's no long-term conviction. One exception so far is SBX 6900 and Murad. He's been backing that project for a long time. Initially, he promoted 10 projects, but now it's mostly just SBX 6900. That's a level of consistency you don't see often, and clearly it's working. SBX 6900 was near all-time highs recently, a rarity in this market. If more influencers actually stuck with their top picks, maybe we'd see more projects actually performing well. That's all for today. Numbers don't lie.